Cletus had won Security Guard of the Year 4 years in a row at the massive 5-story corporate headquarters of Henderson and Pike Corporate Solutions. But nobody understood how. Every month, the executives held little ceremonies in the lobby where they gave Cletus plaques, gift cards, embroidered jackets, and once even a cruise voucher. The CEO called him the silent guardian of the company, but the employees called him something else, and they called him Sleepy Sasquatch. Cletus was a large man with a droopy mustache, heavy boots, and the unique ability to fall asleep standing up. He carried a flashlight the size of a baseball bat and walked around the building with the confidence of a Navy SEAL, despite being completely unaware of everything happening around him. Every morning at 8 a.m., Cletus began his security rounds, and every morning disaster followed. One Monday morning, Vanessa from payroll came flying into work 10 minutes late while balancing a giant iced coffee, 2 file folders, and her purse that somehow always slid off her shoulder at the worst possible moments. She jumped out her car in a panic and sprinted toward the building. She even accidentally left her car running. Not just unlocked, running, engine on, air conditioning blasting, radio playing soft jazz. Meanwhile, Cletus was supposedly patrolling the parking lot. But in reality, he was leaning against a pillar eating powdered donuts and staring into space like he was communicating with satellites. 8 hours later, after an exhausting shift full of meetings and spreadsheets, Vanessa walked back outside to her car with coworkers. Then she froze. Her car was still sitting there humming peacefully in the exact same spot. Headlights on, gas tank nearly empty, music still playing. One coworker slowly whispered, "There's no way your car has been running all day." Vanessa screamed, "Cletus, has my car been on this whole time?" Employees gathered around in disbelief. Meanwhile, Cletus casually walked over holding a bag of barbecue chips. Vanessa looked horrified. "Cletus, you mean to tell me you didn't notice my car running all day?" Cletus adjusted his security vest like he was preparing for a press conference, then said confidently, "Oh, I noticed it." Everyone went silent. "You did?" Vanessa yelled. Cletus nodded seriously. "Yes, ma'am, I was monitoring it, but I thought you were inside the car." Vanessa blinked. "Cletus, you saw me walk in the building this morning. I never came back out to my car. You would know that if you were paying attention to the parking lot." Cletus just stood there in silence. But that wasn't even the worst part. Around 6:30 one morning, several employees arrived early for a quarterly presentation and found at least 12 giant possums gathered around the front entrance doors like they were attending a business conference. The possums hissed aggressively. One employee screamed. Another dropped her laptop. A third climbed onto a decorative bench yelling, "Why are they looking at us like that?" And where was Cletus? Well, he was asleep in the security office with a half-eaten honey bun resting on his chest. Employees later discovered the nocturnal creatures had been gathering there every night for nearly 2 weeks because somebody kept leaving vending machine snacks outside the entrance. And that somebody was Cletus. He had been feeding them because he thought they were night squirrels. Soon the complaints against him started multiplying rapidly, saying Cletus allowed strangers into the building. Cletus disappeared during emergencies. Cletus never checks badges for security purposes. Cletus left the loading dock wide open overnight. Cletus watched a random man carry out 3 office printers and thought he was maintenance. One employee even wrote, "I honestly believe a baked potato in a security uniform would provide more protection." But upper management never believed the workers. Why? Because every time executives visited the building, Cletus magically transformed into the greatest security guard alive. The second leadership walked through the lobby doors. He suddenly stood straight, saluted aggressively, and started speaking in mysterious tactical phrases like perimeter secured, situation contained, eyes everywhere. And although nobody really knew what he meant, the executives loved him. "Cletus has presence," said the regional director. "He makes me feel safe," said another executive who only visited twice a year. Meanwhile, employees were practically writing angry letters to HR. One pregnant employee complained that Cletus never held doors open for her while she carried bags and waddled through the entrance exhausted. Instead, he would stare blankly at her from behind the security desk while eating trail mix. Employees carrying giant file boxes struggled through doors while Cletus watched them like they were performing Olympic events. And the mailman regularly stood at the front desk shouting, "Hello, anybody here?" Because Cletus was never actually at his post. Half the time he was checking the perimeter. The other half he was asleep somewhere mysterious. Strangers wandered through the building constantly. Nobody was ever asked for identification. At one point, a random man spent nearly 2 hours on the 4th floor eating yogurt in an empty conference room before anyone realized he didn't work there. When confronted, Cletus shrugged and said he looked corporate. And even worse, employees constantly complained about a malfunctioning elevator that jerked violently between floors. Did Cletus report it? No. Instead, he claimed he thought the shaking was part of the elevator's personality. But there was one major problem with every complaint against him. There was no evidence. Every time employees tried reporting incidents, the security footage was mysteriously missing, corrupted, or offline. The IT department couldn't figure it out until one evening, Brandon from facilities returned to the office around 11 p.m. after forgetting his lunchbox. That's when he discovered the horrifying truth. Cletus had unplugged nearly every security camera on the first floor. Not to hide criminal activity, but because the blinking red lights bothered him while he slept. And what's even worse, Cletus had dragged multiple office chairs together behind the security desk to create what employees later described as a fully furnished studio apartment because it had a blanket, a portable fan, a microwave, and a tiny television. There was even a handwritten sign taped to the desk that said, "Wake me only if building on fire, and even then assess situation first." Brandon immediately recorded everything on his phone and sent it in a mass text. The next morning, employees finally had proof, and the footage spread through the office like wildfire. Workers gathered around computers, crying, laughing. One video showed Cletus snoring loudly, while 2 random teenagers wandered through the lobby eating chips from the vending machine. Another showed a pregnant employee struggling with 3 heavy boxes, while Cletus slowly turned his chair away, pretending not to notice her. One clip showed the mailman yelling, "Hello, anybody here?" Meanwhile, only one of Cletus' boots could be seen sticking out from under the desk while he slept. But the final video completely destroyed him. At 2:14 a.m., the elevator malfunctioned and trapped 3 employees working late due to overtime. The emergency alarm rang repeatedly, but Cletus did not respond. The footage showed him unplugging the emergency speaker because it interrupted his nap. The next morning, upper leadership called an emergency meeting. Employees packed the conference room like it was a movie premiere. The CEO looked devastated. "Cletus," he sighed, "were you sleeping during your shifts?" Cletus sat silently for a long moment. Then he calmly replied, "Technically, I was horizontally monitoring the property." The room exploded. One woman fell completely out of her chair laughing. Another employee shouted he called possums night squirrels. The HR director had tears streaming down her face. Cletus was terminated immediately. But the biggest twist came 3 weeks later. Despite being fired from the corporate office, Cletus somehow landed a new job as the overnight security guard at a furniture warehouse across town. On his very first shift, 17 couches disappeared. Not 1, not 2, 17. The warehouse owner arrived the next morning expecting outrage, insurance claims, and a full investigation. Instead, after looking around the nearly empty warehouse, he smiled. "Honestly," he said, "those couches hadn't sold in years." He glanced at Cletus, who was proudly sipping coffee and insisting the building had been unusually peaceful all night. The owner thought for a moment. "Well, if your negligence keeps helping us clear out old inventory, you might be the most profitable employee I've ever hired." And just like that, Cletus received another Employee of the Month award. To this day, no one knows how. But somewhere in a warehouse with mysteriously shrinking inventory, Cletus is probably asleep, horizontally monitoring the property.